This is now one of the biggest protest movements in the world. Millions of farmers in northern India are speaking out against Prime Minister Narendra Modi's new farm laws passed last September. They're taking dramatic steps to make their voices heard.
This is an absolute confrontation between the two sides.
Occupying highways and setting up huge camps to prevent corporate-friendly reforms that they say will make them vulnerable to exploitation and push them further into debt.
They are calling these laws death warrant of farmers.
Protesters have been hit with water cannons and tear gas, and the government has been cracking down on dissent. The movement has captured the world's attention, shining a spotlight on India's increasingly authoritarian government. But why did these protests get so big? And is this India's biggest challenge to capitalism yet? I'm Dina, and we're going to take a look inside one of the protest camps and meet the farmers who say they're not backing down until they've won. I wanted to get a better sense of what it's like for the farmers who are on the front lines of this conflict. So I reached out to someone who's been on the ground. So I hear the cars behind you and I see that you're in a tent. Are you actually on the road right now? Blocking it?
Yeah, the road is the National Highway 44. I am inside the tent.
This is Sandeep. He's been covering the protests since they began in late November. He's at one of the largest protest camps located north of India's capital, New Delhi, in a village called Singhu.
A new town has come up on Delhi's borders on National Highway 44.
Police had initially stopped the protesters from reaching the capital.
Delhi police installed the barricades. Farmers have not blocked the road. Delhi police and paramilitary have.
So instead, thousands of farmers are camping out here, holding rallies, sleeping in their trucks, sharing communal meals, washing their clothes, and worshiping together. They've even figured out a rotation system that allows them to return home and tend to their land.
As farmers usually some wake up at 4 a.m., some 5 a.m., some 6 a.m. They go and they take bath. With the water they bring in their own tankers.
Farming is a big deal in India because, after all, the country has to feed its 1.4 billion people. More than half of the country works in agriculture, but 85% of small-scale farmers own less than 5 acres. Most of the protesting farmers come from these northwestern states, notably Punjab, which is known as India's breadbasket. There are over 1 million farming households in Punjab alone. The state is also nearly 60% Sikh, a minority religion in India. In September, Modi's far-right party, the BJP, hastily passed 3 emergency farm bills to make the country's agricultural sector more free market-based, meaning it would favor larger agricultural corporations over small farmers.
And since Modi came into power, he has followed this agenda of free market, under which they are selling the public sector companies to private players. They are privatizing everything.
And that's a big problem for farmers, since agriculture in India has long been government regulated and partly subsidized. Modi's farm laws were criticized for being jammed through during a pandemic, and if implemented, they'd offer farmers zero protections from market volatility. So the backlash was immediate. On November 26th, 250 million people in India participated in what's thought to be the largest strike in history. And it's not hard to see why farmers are so worried. For decades, India has used what's called a mandi system, which is a state-regulated wholesale marketplace. Agents help farmers sell their crops at a minimum support price and ensure they get paid on time. They essentially act as middlemen. These agents are a lifeline to farmers. They're often a source of credit after costly events like drought, crop failure, and even weddings. But under Modi's new laws, the agents would disappear. And so millions of small farmers and farm laborers fear that these neoliberal reforms will put them at the mercy of greedy corporations.
If these laws get implemented, they would have no other option but to leave the farming.
Modi's government says that the reforms will actually increase farmers' profits and modernize a dying agricultural system by allowing for more competition and investment. But as many observers point out, privatization is what's been hurting these farmers in the first place. Punjabi Sikh feminist and author Harsha Walia says this dates back to the country's Green Revolution in the 1960s, when India industrialized its agricultural sector.
The Green Revolution was the beginning of the past few decades of bringing misery for farmers in India. It brought massive industrial agriculture. It bought monocropping, which destroyed the land. It brought GMOs, which were unhealthy for people and polluted the waters. And it led to massive epidemic of indebtedness and, farmers losing their land.
All of this has led to India having some of the highest farmer suicide rates in the world. Over 10,000 farmers and farm laborers died by suicide in 2019 alone. But back to the current movement. Things escalated on January 26th, India's Republic Day. As farmers marched towards New Delhi, a smaller group stormed the iconic Red Fort Palace and hung Sikh flags. It played into the government narrative that the movement is backed by separatists. Modi authorized police and paramilitary forces to use tear gas and water cannons. One person was killed and hundreds of officers were injured. Authorities then descended on the camps and set up concrete barriers, spikes, and barbed wire. For many, it was the latest display of the Modi government's Hindu nationalist agenda. In 2019, India's parliament passed a discriminatory law to use religion as the basis for citizenship for minorities from neighboring countries. It led to a wave of violence against Muslims who are excluded by the law.
Modi, I would argue, is far more dangerous than Donald Trump in terms of his vision of fascism, the fact that he is backed by the world's largest paramilitary, and that he openly advocates for a politics of genocide.
The government has cut off internet and bathroom access around the camps, and multiple journalists and activists have been arrested under sedition charges. So where do things stand now? Well, this is the first movement to bring the ruling BJP to the negotiating table. But more than 10 rounds of talks have yet to quell the protests because farm union leaders say they won't back down until the laws are totally repealed. Meanwhile, the mainstream corporate Indian media has tried to paint the protesters as anti-national and even rich. But this movement has managed to unite folks from different segments of Indian society.
We have farmers and farm workers. We have people who are privileged by caste and people who are oppressed by caste. We have men and women in equal leadership roles on the front lines of the farmer unions. We have people of all faiths. There are Muslim folks, Hindu folks, and of course Sikh folks. This is a political crisis of an immense magnitude for the Modi government.
And support for the movement is growing. There have even been solidarity demonstrations across the US and Canada, and hundreds of human rights and activist organizations have come out in support of the farmers.
Transformation of the farming sector is not only about reversing neoliberalism, it is also about completely dismantling and annihilating caste and caste apartheid in India, including in the agricultural sector.
The way of farming is not sustainable even for farmers. They are not making a lot of money. Government needs to provide them a better solution where they can make more money. They can lead good lives, better lives.
From the looks of it, the farmers aren't going anywhere. Sandeep told me some are even determined to stay until 2024, the same year Modi is up for re-election.
They are very much connected to the land. They love their land. They call it as their mother. So they see that they are ready to risk anything.
Hey guys, so what do you think of India's farmers movement? Have you been following it and do you think it'll be successful? Let me know in the comments, and also please make